Welcome to Music Outlook LA, the weekly podcast which highlights the independent artists, whether they're a musician, vocalist, actor, actress, live audio or in-studio engineer, or a videographer, photographer. I'm your host, Will Kimsey. Each episode, we'll look at the gigs of the independent artists, from the venues we play to how we set up and break down, the gear we use and why we use it, and the info we hope you'll find useful as we all make our way in the entertainment industry. Music Outlook LA is brought to you by Kim Z Entertainment, LLC. Go to kim-zentertainment.com to find out what they're doing for the independent artists. Kim Z Entertainment, LLC. Independent entertainment done independently. Today, my guest is Keith Jacks of Third Rail Productions, based in Teaneck, New Jersey. He's a world-class engineer who's worked with artists such as Najee, KRS One, Michael Bolton, and the late Donna Summer, just to name a few. He's a graduate of Full Sail Center for the Recording Arts, aka Full Sail University out of Florida, and he's also studied at Berklee College of Music in Boston. Today, Keith and I are going to talk about TRP, his creation process in the studio, the gear used for various types of projects, the gigs he's been a part of, how to build an audience, promoting independent projects, client contracts, non-disclosure agreements, and more. Keith, welcome.
What's up?
Music Outlook LA, the first episode, my brother. Thank you so much for being a part of this and helping a brother launch what shall be a successful venture.
Yeah, man. God willing, brother. I no pressure, man. Being the first on is, I feel no pressure. I've been to this game before. It's all good.
There you go, folks. I've known this man since I was 18. Now I forget whether he's older than me or not. It doesn't really matter. We have known each other for decades. We first met at Berklee College of Music. He stayed for a year, then he bounced over to Full Sail. But we've kept in touch over the years. I am proud to call this man one of my best friends.
Man, it's one of those things. As you get to the age we're at, you're blessed to be able to look back and count a handful of best friends if you're fortunate. And yes, man, I'm blessed to know you. I am honored to know you, and I have watched your evolution from afar. And I'm proud of you, brother. I'm proud of you.
Hey, as I am you. And I was checking out your website, and that's what I want to talk about. Third Rail Productions, a.k.a. TRP. Keith, tell us all about TRP.
Well, the funny thing is, man, TRP actually birthed when you and I were at Berklee. I don't know if you remember our brother Curtis Haywood. He's a very talented musician. He's recent years, he's taken to focusing on being an artist. And, that's one of those things that, I would probably advise against. But, everyone has an opinion. Everyone has their calling, man. And Curtis likes to blow, man. So he's been recording and doing his thing, and I'm proud of him as well. But Curtis and I, we met up at Berklee. He was from the New York area. We started talking about, what was next after Berklee. And we decided to start, our own production company. And, it never really, it was hard to do. It was hard to do because, this is, again, you're right. We were like 18 years old. We didn't know what we were doing, man. We just had a love for making music. So, eventually what ended up happening, Curtis, again, like I said, even back then, he was focused on being an artist. I think he was playing with a gospel group called Joshua. And he went over, he wanted to focus on doing that. And so, he left Third Rail and went on to do his thing. And I soldiered on. And in all honesty, Third Rail didn't do a whole lot in the early years because my career as an engineer was just so busy. I was just so busy in and out of the studios that I just really didn't have a lot of time to even, think about production, let alone, find artists and do that type of stuff. So it took a while before Third Rail really began to become a force in my life.
Mm-hmm. So, out of Teaneck, and I've been to Teaneck. I still remember staying at your mom's place with you, driving up to New York from Boston. And I remember getting up that one morning, after the first night. I got up, I looked out the window, and I could see the George Washington Bridge from your house, and I'm like, well, it's gonna be traffic getting in the city.
Well, let's be all right. You can't see the George Washington Bridge from my house, but we're close. We're pretty close. And yes, traffic is something we deal with on a fairly regular basis. But that was one of those things that you just had to live with, man. Because you were blessed to live in LA, which is a mecca. New York is a mecca, and at the time, remember, man, this is way before laptops and GarageBand and being able to just pick up a couple of pieces of gear and start recording. Like, I had to be in a recording studio if I was going to be doing anything half serious. So living just outside of New York City was a beautiful thing. I would, be able to work. I worked a lot. I just worked on a regular basis, and that was good. It was exciting. I got to do a lot of amazing projects, and I learned a lot. Like the everything I learned back in the day working in studios, working with Otaris and Studer machines and SSL consoles, Neve consoles, all the old school stuff, and stuff even older than that, old MCIs and all kinds of things. I tell you, man, all that stuff translated. If you understand your basics as the evolution into digital and home recording, it just made my skill set that much deeper. And blessed for that. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what this show is going to be all about. I'm trying to put out what I know and continue to learn at the same time. Knowledge, info, whatever you want to call it, to people like myself who consider ourselves independent artists. Right. At Kim Z Entertainment, we thoroughly believe in the power of independence. Our slogan, whatever you want to call it, is independent entertainment done independently. And I mean, with the advent of technology, as you said, it has gotten a lot easier to go from having to go to the recording studio to actually having one in your home. And think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Back in the day, if you were blessed to have the kind of money you would need to buy stuff, and we're talking in the 70s and 80s, the equipment was large, it was clunky, and you couldn't just put it in your bedroom. Now take a look where we are. We've got laptops. We've got programs like Pro Tools. I'm using Logic. We've got mixing boards that are, the size of a 8x11 sheet of paper. I mean, come on, folks. That's what this show is all about. We're going to talk about the gigs, the gear, and give you info so that you can traverse the entertainment industry waters. So, Keith, with regards to TRP, what do you do? What are the services? Who are the peeps?
Well, here's the deal. A few years back, I kind of tapped out of. I was never an open studio. All right, let's get that clear. That was not something I wanted. I did enough of that in my career working in studios. Third Rail was always about projects that I wanted to do, how I wanted to do them, with the people I wanted to do them with.
Right.
So I never hung up a shingle and said, "Hey, Joe and your band come record here." That was never my thing. I did enough of that, in incredible studios, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. So Third Rail was always just my playground for projects. I found, I produced a few artists, nothing big, nothing really came of it. I had, a couple of artists got real close to getting signed to major deals. I don't know if you probably don't remember a cat named Tony Rich, but he was signed to LaFace Records, and every time I hear, I don't hear much from him these days. I don't know what happened to him, but
I remember Tony. I've heard his stuff.
Okay, so he's an artist. I had an artist, Robin O'Neill, incredibly talented singer, and we were working with LaFace, and we were just about, they were really into Rob and wanted to sign him, and then, they signed Tony Rich instead. So that might have been when I really got frustrated with the industry and said, you know what, I'm done. I don't know. I mean, I can't say that for sure, but I know it was close in that time.
Because the thing about the industry, it has changed so much over the years that, for my wife and I, we thoroughly believe in doing our own thing. That's what Kim Z Entertainment is all about, too. It's pretty much our playground as well. We do hang up our shingle. So if you guys go to kimzentertainment.com, KIM-Z-entertainment.com, and we're going to talk about the dashes, too. Don't forget the dash. You will see some of the services that we provide. But
there it is.
So you're pretty much either closed, working on your projects, or I would imagine if somebody is really nice, they might be able to schedule an appointment. So what kind of projects are you doing at Third Rail?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right. I definitely have done projects for people that I really dig. The last album I actually did was for the late, great Ronnie Jordan. He was called the Hip Hop Guitar Player. Ronnie and I worked on his album here, and Straight Up Street, I think was the name of the album. He ended up doing some weird stuff with it after I finished with my end of the project. The mixes I did, he had somebody else do. So I honestly don't know. I haven't really listened. I heard some of it and I wasn't impressed. I asked him to take my name off of it. I don't know what he did, but and then I was living in Singapore for a bit, and I heard he had passed away. I never really got any details of what happened to him. He was a wonderfully talented cat. I'm glad I got to know him, get to work with him. But that was like the last album I did for anybody. What I focused on, what I was focusing on at that time and since after that was I recognize that, one of the things you got to be able to do with this gig, in this game, is know your strength, know what works for you. So for me, I knew I was never going to be a pop songwriter. I knew I was never going to be a hip hop writer or anything like that. I was very much, and a lot of the influence from Berklee, I was very much a textural kind of guy, and I just kind of felt a kinship, a pull towards film and television. So I started writing a lot of music for film and television and trying to get into that industry, which was a struggle, which it's always a struggle. You gotta have the energy, you gotta have the drive. And honestly, I made that change late in my life. And I didn't have the struggle. I didn't have the drive. I just, not like back in the day, like when I was an engineer, it was nothing for me to go, be in the studio for 3 days straight, work with KRS One, finish that session, run across town to go work with Eric B. and Rakim. And, it was just, that was a 20-something that was on his grind. And so, if you don't have that grind, don't bother.
Exactly. If you don't have the grind,
right.
Don't bother.
Right. This is not, you see these artists that get picked up and it seems like they just got, they just jumped up and it happened. And that's true in some cases. But the artists that are going to be around for more than one album or more than one single are dudes that are putting in their time. So, for me, I started working on film music and I didn't, again, varied success, not the success I wanted. And then, about 2 years ago, my brother-in-law comes to me and he's like, hey, man, I want to start making movies. And I was like, good for you. And he's laughing. He's like, I want you to help me out. I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. I said, let me explain something to you, brother. A movie set is filled with people. Getting a movie made is like herding cats. And it's not something that I like to do. Because you know what I do? When I want to make a piece of music, I walk up the stairs to my private studio. I sit down and I pick up my guitar and I just start composing. I just start writing. And I don't have to argue with nobody. I don't have to schedule nothing. I don't have to do nothing except get out of my drawers, into some pants, and start playing.
There you go.
So making movies, yeah, man. And making movies just wasn't something that I wanted to do. But, he kept at me and finally I capitulated. And next thing I know, I'm a movie producer. And that's okay because, it was funny because I honestly didn't even make the connection initially, but I realized, hey, this is an outlet for my music. So being, and understand that there's the other side of that, that's a double, again, when you're an artist, we all know that there's a huge level of insecurity. Like I am, I suffer from that in the worst way. I have had people that have known me for years, maybe most of my life, and then they find out about my music and they're just shocked because they're like, wait, I didn't know this about you. I was like, well, okay. And then they find and they start checking stuff out. Like, yo, man, what are you doing? And I'm just like, I'm just writing music, man. Leave me alone. So,
there you go.
Getting.
Yep, there you go. So I guess that this room that you get out of your drawers in and get to being Captain Mad Scientist is also known as the Red Room, right?
Indeed, brother. The Red Room has evolved, man. Like you said, back in the day when I first created the Red Room, it consisted of write this down and look it up. I had a Casio C as in Charlie, Z as in zebra, CZ1, I believe it was called. This was just a drum machine that had maybe 2 sounds per pad, and then it had 4 little sample buttons that sampled at a half second each. And then you could gang them together to get a whole 2 seconds of sampling. And brother, that back in the day, that was a huge deal.
Right.
And so I had that, and the very first studio I worked out of when I left Full Sail, I started an internship and became the chief engineer there because the studio was folding. And it was, I'll never forget, Andy and Kathy Parks, they, brother and sister, owned this studio. It was in Manhattan. It was right next to the club, the Limelight. And I pretty much had full run of that place. And so we stayed open for probably close to 2 years before they finally folded. And I'll never forget the night we folded. Andy was also, he was a country artist. Taught me so much about country music because I was never into country music, but God bless him, he taught me a lot. And the studio folded, and we did this final session. A whole bunch of really great artists came in, studio musicians, and then we started tearing the place apart. Because they were from Texas and they were taking the studio down and moving it back to Texas. And in the process, we were going through gear, and they handed me an Electro Voice RE20, which I still have,
Mm-hmm.
and they handed me a Sony 1/4-inch 4-track. Which I still have, but essentially those 3 pieces, the Casio, the RE20, and the Sony deck, that was the beginning of the Red Room. That was the beginning of my studio, and I still have some of the tapes of the songs I produced by myself, and those will go to the grave with me. No one will ever hear them, but they were fun to do. It was like figuring out how to work, with minimal gear, and man, oh man, good old days. But the Red Room has evolved. Today I'm running a Midas Venice F32. I've got more outboard gear than I thought I would ever have. I'm a Pro Tools guy. I love Pro Tools. And for no other reason other than, it's an industry standard. I think Logic is fantastic. I haven't worked with it in years, but back in the day, I used to work with it a lot. There's a lot of great stuff out there, but Pro Tools is an industry standard. It's great for me. I love it. I do everything I can with it. My production, my recording, my, mix to film, all that stuff. And, the Red Room is, it truly is. It's, it's in the top floor of my house, and I love having it here for, whatever reason, whatever I need to do. So, we make films now. My brother-in-law, he writes films, and I produce. I put together schedules and artists and, actors and things, and I act in some of them. We are a zero budget company, so everything you see, if you go to my website, t-r-p.net, you can see all of our films, and I will tell you that all the films we've done combined, I don't think we spent $1,000. Everything we've done, we've managed to do with the, love and support of family and friends, which is key. And we've managed to get people to, act in our films and support us with doing different things that we need. And very rarely have we had to pay someone directly. And that's not that we don't want to. It's just, we can't. We don't have any money for it. But sometimes, we do what we got to do. And right now, we've done a bunch of shorts. We've had two or three of our shorts have been accepted into film festivals and won awards. And we're very proud of that. Matter of fact, the first one that got into a festival, that was one of the questions that was asked by the panel. They said, what was your budget? And when we said 0, there was a stunned hush in the room, like no one could believe us. And we're like, well, we ain't got no reason to lie. That's the truth. We didn't have any money. So we're proud of that, but obviously it would be nice to have budget. So we're actually finishing up the pre-production for our first feature, which we're really excited about. Matter of fact, we have our first shoot date for that, which is early July. And, that's what I've been doing. Like, I've been really focused on that stuff. And it's a lot of fun because I get to be involved, with the development side. And then, if I act in the film, that's fun as well. And then I really shine and I really get to the stuff that I love in the post-production, which is, doing the sound design and scoring the films. And I tell you, man, I love that stuff like a fat kid loves cake. It's just, to me, that is the best part of anything, man. I just love, you look at a scene and you figure out what it needs, and, you're adding background noise and sound effects, and then I get to the music, and that, it just, man, it feeds my soul. You know what that's like. You know what it's like when you write something and it just, everything comes together, and I have a piece of music and it works for the scene and it makes the scene better. I mean, my brother-in-law is a talented kid. He's really good. I'm very proud of him. And, my only goal is to enhance what he does and what he comes up with. And, hopefully I'm doing him justice, man, because, he's going to make some moves. And, if I can hold on to his coattails, I'll make those moves with him.
There you go. So speaking about the creation process, which I want to jump to, everybody that does this being entertaining, making projects, whether it be a labor of love or you're trying to make money at it, we all have a creation process. I know for me, when I'm working on a piece of music, I like to record from the bottom up. I'll lay the drums down, then the bass, then chord changes, and so on until finally I put the lead in on top. Then I go back in the studio, balance it out, mix it, master it, what have you. That's the short explanation. When you're doing a film or even a piece of music, Keith, how do you go about it?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little different, man. I mean, I tend to start off. I usually start off with the changes. I usually start off with the chords. I pick up my guitar and I kind of start noodling around and I figure out, what I'm, especially for a film. I'm trying to enhance the mood of what you're seeing on the screen. So, I usually start with chords and put the changes together. And sometimes it'll just be maybe an A section or a B section. It's just, just something to get started. And then I'll lay that down. And then I'll go to drums. I'll go to drums or percussion depending on what I want to do. And, sometimes I just get a basic groove just to get me to the next section, and so it varies, it's interesting, you're kind of, especially when it's again with a film, you're not as free to go wherever you want. Like if I'm just writing a piece of music just because it's in my head, it can go anywhere it wants, and I let it go where it wants to go. I'm a big believer in letting the music come out of me organically. But for a film, I don't want to say you're constrained, but for me, I'm trying to be respectful of the source material. So, I try to make sure that I'm supporting and not distracting from or overpowering, what I'm seeing on the film. And one of the things that I remember having this conversation with a couple of friends and explaining to them that, in my mind, good or bad, sometimes the best soundtracks are overlooked. You go to a movie and you're blown away by the movie, and then you don't always realize how important the soundtrack was, because it just became fused into what you were seeing. It was all one big experience, so the soundtrack didn't stand out. And to me, that's a good thing. I want it to be good. I want it to stand up on its own. But, as long as it works with the film, as long as it's organic to what you're seeing, and like I said, supports it, makes it feel better, look better, whatever. That's my process. And I'm also famous for, like, if you went through my drive, man, I probably have a couple of hundred songs that are in process. Like I start something and I get stuck or the vibe isn't there, so I leave it alone. And there's stuff on there 10 years old that is just waiting for me to come back to it. And I do. I have done that many times where I just go through projects just to remind myself, what was I doing here? And then I'll hear something like, oh, and I have a whiteboard in my studio, and I'll jump up and scribble on the whiteboard some notes about that piece of music, and I'll come back to it in a couple of days, or even just stop what I'm doing and get right to it. But so my process is kind of chaotic, man. It's actually very chaotic.
A little method to the madness. I hear you. So in that creation, what are some of your favorite pieces of gear that you like to use? Or even better still, let's just put this scenario out there. The project has been filmed to some extent, whatever level it is, doesn't matter. And you've got a copy. Whether you're going to go back or not, that's a whole nother issue. But you've got something that you use so that you can go on ahead and do what you've just described, create music to help enhance the scene. What's the first thing you grab?
Funny, man. Like I said, it's usually a guitar. It's usually the guitar. And
what kind of guitar?
I'm embarrassed to say this, man. I have like 14 guitars in my studio. I've got 2 different MIDI guitars. I got a Brian Moore, which I love. I've got a Godin. My acoustic guitars, I have what do I have? I have a Taylor. I have a Taylor acoustic, which I really love to just kind of work out on. I got a Strat. I'm a Tele guy. I've got a Telecaster. I've got a couple of Schecter Labs Telecasters, which were, really hard to find. I fell in love with them back in the 80s, watching Pete Townsend play them. Found a guy in Japan that was selling them, and I got 2 of them, and I love them to death. I mean, I got a lot of guitars, bro. So there's always a guitar nearby. I grab that, and that's what I start with. And, the funny thing is like, by the time, you hear what I did on the guitar, if I recorded that and then played the final version, it wouldn't sound anything the same, relatively speaking. But one of the things I do love, one of my favorite pieces of software is TuneTrack's Easy Keys. I hate to give this secret up, man, but I'm not a keyboard player. I don't have the skill set, and so I use Easy Keys. And if you're not familiar with it, get familiar with it. It is a fabulous product. I'm not endorsed by them. I wish I was, but I'm a big fan of what they do, because basically what they do is they create these performance packs and in different genres, which means nothing to me because I mix and match. But you sit down with the software, you put your chord changes in, and then you can go through all these hundreds and thousands of performances that play your chords. So I will spend days going through those performances, finding what fits for the piece that I'm working on, and then I will, drop that into Pro Tools, and then I'll start editing it. I do a lot of MIDI editing to get the piano performance or the keyboard performance to be what I want. And I mix and match genres all the time. They have, funk and hip hop and pop and, rock and roll. There's all kinds of genres that they offer, and it means very little to me. I just look for what feels right for me, and I will edit together what needs. Sometimes I'll play a performance, and there's one measure of that performance that I love, and I will edit that into something else because it works in my head. So between those two things, having the guitar basic chords and then the easy keys and the piano parts put together, then I'll start thinking about drums and what drama I want to create with the percussion and things like that. And again, depending on the piece, like how much orchestration, bare bones, whatever. But that's probably I have lots of different pieces of software, lots of drums. I love Native Instruments stuff. I have a bunch of different drum programs, and some things I lean on more than others. And that's one of the things that's funny about this kind of thing is that I know that I have to be very careful not to let myself get stuck in ruts where I'd use the same things over and over again. I mentioned the easy keys because that's probably the one thing that I go back to all the time because I'm not a piano player. I'm just not a piano player, and I love piano, and I wish I could do the piano runs that I've created on my own, but I just can't do it. So, this is where I create that part of the foundation. In fact, when that came out, I went back and redid a bunch of my songs because I was like, oh, finally I can have some, really great piano performances. And, so that was how I learned to use it effectively. But that's my favorite thing, man. I mean, like I said, I have, I got rid of a lot of stuff lately. I have a Korg MS-2000R, which I love, Roland XV5050. Those are probably the only outboard synths that I still have. I've transitioned mostly to soft synths within Pro Tools because, over the years, those things have just become more and more amazing. And, so I a couple of months ago, or maybe a year or so ago, I realized I had an entire collection of keyboards that I just wasn't using anymore, so I started, selling those off. But yeah, man, that's my big crutch of all the things I have. Easy Keys is my biggest crutch, and it's probably in 99% of the stuff that I've done in recent years.
Well, all right. Couple more questions for you, actually, maybe even more, because we are not going to fit all of this into 30 minutes, but we're going to make it do what it do, and we're going to go over, folks. So check it out. This is going to take you back. Do you still have that Telecaster you had at Berklee?
No, you know what? That's funny. I didn't have a Tele at Berklee. What I had was a
Wasn't it black and white?
It was just black. It was a Strat knockoff. Let's make no foolish judgments here. Be very clear. I was a poor kid. My mom struggled to keep food on the table, and so when I decided to become a guitar player or started playing guitar, she was as supportive as she could be. Yeah. So for a woman who worked around the clock to raise her two sons. So I don't know if you guys you're not going to remember this place. Most of you won't, but there's a store called Sam Goody back in the day. It was a record store, and they sold instruments too. And so they had a guitar line. I think it was called Hondo, Hondo. Uh-huh. So yeah, so my mom bought, I was in this, I didn't know anything about guitars, and I looked up, I saw this black guitar, and I didn't know anything about Strats. I just saw it, I liked it. It was a Hondo 2 Professional, and that's what it was called, bruh. And yes, I still have it. And I want to tell you a funny story about that. You remember Mark Whitfield?
Oh, God, yes.
Mark Whitfield was that Berklee cat who came to Berklee, and the myths surrounding him are deep and wide. I think he's playing with Chris Bodie now. I'm not 100% sure, but Mark and I, for some reason, he and I kind of hit it off. And one day he came by my room in the dorm, and we were just chilling, chatting, and he picked up my guitar and he started playing it, and he did stuff to my guitar. When he was done, he put it down. There was smoke coming off of it, and I didn't touch that guitar for a month because I just kept looking at it like, oh, you tramp, you let him touch you the way he touched you. I'm like, oh, what's wrong with you? I was so disappointed in my guitar. But yes, man, I still have that guitar. I have dreams of cleaning it up and, giving it to my daughter if and when she ever decides that's something she wants to do. But I'm looking at the case right now, man. It's sitting in the corner. I love that guitar, man. That guitar took me through some stuff and got me to some great places.
Yeah, I remember coming into your room because, folks, we would go down. Like I said, I've known this man for years. And at Berklee, we would go because we were both on the same floor, on the 8th floor, and they served us 3 meals a day. They were garbage, but you ate it because you were hungry and
broke.
Yes, there you go. And broke, and you actually looked forward to shepherd's pie. But we would go down we would go down for either breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Keith's door would be open 90% of the time, and there he would be, sitting in his chair with his Hondo on his lap, working something out. And I always picture that, always remember that, and that's one of my fondest Berklee College of Music memories. As the show progresses, folks, you're going to hear a lot of memories because a lot of my friends came out of Berklee. Whether they stayed or not, I'm still in touch with them. Earlier, you mentioned
there it is.
The support system, and by that, you were talking about zero budget, family and friends, and what have you, supporting you. Again, can you stress to the listening audience how important it is for us independent artists, no matter what level we're on, as well as any creative person, no matter who they are, where they are, what they do, how important a support system is?
Listen, man, that goes without saying, but here's the first thing, man. You gotta commit. You don't do this because, unfortunately, we live in a day and age that people are more concerned about being famous than being talented. My thing is, learn your craft, become good at your craft. And then, because the truth is not everybody has a support system. At different points in my career, I didn't have the support that I wanted. But I've managed, just like you, man, you've maintained contact with people, and you're at the point, you've been at the point in your career for a long time where you could pick up the phone and say, hey man, listen, I need some help with XYZ. And you've done that because you cultivated friendships. You had friends and family that it was just like, I don't know what you're doing, bruh, but whatever you need, I got you. Whatever that was, you need a lift to a gig, whatever it was. So yeah, man, you gotta love this stuff. You gotta love what you're doing. And then, yeah, if you're blessed to have a support system, people that are going to say, hey, man, I know your birthday's coming up. I don't know what you do. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm going to get you a gift certificate to Sweetwater or wherever, Guitar Center, whatever it is you need. And, just whatever, you said something about needing, parallel compressors, and I don't know what that is. So, but, here's a gift certificate. Get what you got to get. So, if you have that in your life, man, you're blessed. Be grateful. Never forget the people that were there when it was rough. I'm that dude, man. Like, people get calls from me and I'm sending them a check or something. Like, what's this about? It's like, remember back in the day when you did XYZ? And they're like, no. It's like, well, I do. So that's all you need to know about. And yeah, if you have a support system, be grateful, man. Be grateful and don't forget. That's the worst thing, man. I've seen that happen too, where cats just turn their back on people because, they get to a certain point in their career and they don't need that help anymore, and they forget that these people were there when nobody else was paying attention. Don't be that dude. Don't be that person, man. Because karma is real. Karma is real, and you get back what you put out there. And I try my best. I have stumbled. I have faltered. I have failed. And I get up and my thing is I need to look in the mirror and feel proud of who I am. And for the most part, I am. I've done right by the people who went out of their way for me. And I was blessed to have those people in my life. So yeah, man, your support system is a big deal, and don't take it for granted. Don't ever take it for granted.
There you go. There you go. Okay, this next tip is for the podcasters out there. You know, Keith, I've listened to, in preparing for doing my show, I listen to podcasts quite often to compare notes and the whole 9 yards. And there's a podcast that's out there, and they talk tech and everything else. And when I called you earlier to get this set up, you mentioned a microphone. I'm not going to say what it is because this is a tech show. But we're doing, ladies and gentlemen, what they call a double ender. Keith is recording from his end in New Jersey. I'm recording from my end in California. And then he's going to mail me his file. I'm going to blend it together so it doesn't sound so telephony. But anyway, you got this microphone. And it's one of the baddest mics out there on the planet. Probably badder than mine. Folks, I'm using a Rode NT1A. Okay? It's primarily a singer's mic. But I'm going to tell you, Keith, I started talking into this thing, and I'm using it now. The voice is the voice, even though it's a different timbre. Singing is a lot different than speaking, but I like the sound this mic gets. So what mic are you using?
Well, I have a lot of mics. You know, remember, like I said, you know, if you paid attention, I was talking early on, I was talking about Studers and Otaris. You know, those are old 24-track machines. That's how far back I go.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm a crusty, dusty cat. You know, a lot of music I did was etched into cave walls. So I started buying mics a long, long time ago. When I was buying mics, a lot of these, like Rode was one of these companies that popped up along the way. They weren't very good, to be honest with you. But over the years, they've become very good. So 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I'd have laughed at anybody who told me about a Rode microphone or, you know, a lot of these mics that are out there. But today, nah, man, they're good mics. They're great mics. So the mic I'm using today right now is a Neumann TLM 103, I believe. But again, that's just one of many mics. I've got my favorite mic is actually an AKG C414, excuse me. That's been one of my favorite mics forever because it's just incredibly versatile. I have an AT4046, I think it is. I'm not good with all these numbers. I used to be. But, I mean, I have probably about 9 or 10 mics. And, you know, I have a really wonderful tube mic that I drag out, you know, when I have a vocalist that is doing, like, some really, you know, warm jazz type stuff. But, you know, when you become a geeky engineer like me, man, you know, that becomes part of the landscape where, you know, you listen to somebody's voice and you know what mic is going to sound good for that person. So I have a bunch of mics, and sometimes I'll, you know, if I'm not sure, I'll start the recording session. I'll have like maybe 3 mics that I think are going to work set up, and, you know, let them sing it down, and then I'll go through and listen to those mics and see which one is doing the best service to their mic. So yeah, man, you know, I have more mics than I probably should have. But, you know, like you said, voices are different, man. Every voice is different. You got to treat them differently. You know, there is no single solution. Like, I see people ask that question sometimes on some of these forums that I kind of lurk in, and they're like, yo, what's the best way to capture a vocal? And I laugh because I'm just like, I don't know, man. What does that person sound like? I can't tell you what the best way to capture that vocal is. Well, should I compress going in or coming out? I don't know, man. It depends on the vocal. It depends. I mean, that's going to be the case with everything. You know, you know, I wish people, you know, I love the technology. I love the fact that anybody who wants to do this, they can spend, you know, a couple $100 and get into it. But the thing that they don't do is they don't learn the craft. And I put a lot of years into learning the craft. So, you know, unfortunately, too many people think that, oh, it's just, you know, I have a stereo at home, so I'm an engineer. No, you're not, man. No, you're not. You're not. You're not. You know, I've worked too hard and too long and learned too many things to know all the subtleties and all the differences. And, if you don't know that stuff, then you're cheating yourself, and you need to learn that stuff. But that's I'm not. If you left me alone, brother, I'd get on a soapbox and go on rant about that for 2 days. But that's not what this is about. But yeah, man, the Neumann, I love it. It's terrible for me for singing. It's great for me for talking. So that's why I grabbed that today.
Well, that's all right, because like I said, this mic that I'm using here, as you said, back in the day, Rode wasn't happening. They are now. So, folks, there's a lot of microphones out there. There's a lot of gear out there. But first, learn the craft. That can go a long way into helping you decide what piece of gear you're going to use for whatever it is you're going to be doing. Keith.
You dig.
I'm just saying. So I'm going to start to close this out here. As you said, you go to t-r-p.net and we will find your works, your projects, everything that you've poured your heart and soul into. Well, not everything, but those things that you deem worthy enough to share with America and beyond. But when you're working with folks and everything else, what kind of agreements do you have with your friends or with the people that you work with? How do you get, once the project is done, how do you share it? Those kind of things. Because folks just need to know you don't just hit record on it and put it out there, expect to make a bunch of money, because somebody may scoop up and say it's theirs, and then you've got legal hell you're going through. So bless us with some knowledge on that, if you could.
Well, one of the things that I think my first lawyer gave me, and I still use today, is a songwriter's agreement. So I'm a big believer in, if I'm in the studio with a couple of people and we're working on I'm working on a song. I've done this and shocked people where I'm in the studio and they make a suggestion like, just something, maybe a different note, and I give them credit. I have a couple of friends on some of my songwriter contracts, that aren't musicians, but they happened to be in the studio when I was working. They said something, I took their advice, and so I give them a couple of percents on writing the music. That's just who I am. I'm a big believer in that, because I don't think that there's enough money out there for everybody. But what I always recommend to people is like, if you write a piece of music, a song, and there's people in the room, do not leave that room that day without getting that done. Because the problem is that if you wait a week, if you wait a month, everyone's memory starts to change. Everyone starts to remember it a different way. And God forbid that record gets picked up, that song gets picked up, and all of a sudden, now there's money involved. Now everybody in the room thinks that they were the one that wrote that song. So it's a songwriter's agreement that basically takes, it breaks down, the lyrics are 50%, the music is 50%, and then within those 50%, you figure out what percentage each person contributed to the creation of that music. So I'm a big believer in that. I think it's very important to make sure you do that. And again, can't stress this enough. Do not leave the room without filling that out, because again, everyone's memory gets fuzzy. As far as, that's as far as writing music. For me, the rest of it, film is a little more complicated. You have to do all kinds of releases and stuff. I don't really do a lot of non-disclosures. I don't have to with films, because the beautiful thing about making film is that you can kind of isolate most of it. You don't, like, if I've had actors come on set and they do a scene, they don't really need to know everything. So, and the best part about film is that they can't do anything anyway, because they can't distribute it without me, because they don't get it. I don't give it to them. So, I don't really stress that too much. But as far as writing songs, once you there's something, I do recommend consulting with a lawyer at some point, an entertainment lawyer, to understand, what your specific responsibilities are within whatever you're doing. Like I said, this is a contract. The songwriter's agreement is something my very first lawyer gave to me, and that was easily 40 years ago, and I still use it today. But you should have those types of things. You should have a folder filled with all the forms relative to what you're doing, releases, and if you need non-disclosure agreements, all those things in one place, and handle the business. I can't stress that enough, because too many cats, and it's probably the saddest part of the music industry for me. I've worked with so many cats that I know personally who have been, cheated out of things because they didn't handle the business. They got caught up in the romanticism of, oh man, we're making this beautiful music and everything's great and it's love, 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 and we smoked some really good weed, and it's like, no man, handle the business. Because at the end of the day, again, I could soapbox for an hour, but at the end of the day, it is the music business. And even if you're, no matter how much you love those cats you're working with, it is business. And handle the business up front, and down the road, hopefully, it won't be a problem.
There you go. There you go. Folks, again, info, get the business done. Have those folders for whatever the documents are. Ladies and gentlemen, there are tons of resources on the internet alone where you can go and download these forms for free. As the shows progress, I'll provide some of those web addresses where you can get this form or that form or whatever. Protect your work. Copyright if you're a songwriter. Trademark if you're starting a business. Whatever it is, protect it. And then finally, Keith, there were a bunch more I wanted to ask you, but I'm going to wrap it all up. And on this last one, this is the question I'm going to ask everybody. What's in your car?
What's in my car?
Uh-huh.
You mean technology-wise?
Tune-wise. When you're stuck in traffic somewhere, what do you listen to? Whether it's on Bluetooth audio, CD, what's in your car?
Lord have mercy, brother. You know, that's a can of worms that I don't think you're really ready for. Listen, man. I'll put it this way. I arrived at Berklee as a listener of FM radio. Basically, I had a small collection of music. A lot of it was pop music, R&B music, Jacksons and stuff like that. And my roommate, you remember Highland Harris, who, again, talented drummer, man. I miss Highland. I saw him on TV a couple of months ago doing something for the Louis Armstrong Society. But we haven't been in touch, and I'm sorry about that. But he opened my eyes to jazz, he came, we went to high school. He and I went to high school together. We went to Teaneck High together, and he turned me on to Berklee. I didn't even know what Berklee was, and he turned me on to Berklee because I knew I wanted to be an audio engineer and didn't know what to do with that, and he turned me on to it, and so I applied. I got in, and we became roommates, and so he brought all his or some of his jazz records and turned me on to cats like Spyra Gyra and Sanborn and all kinds of stuff, and Ornette Coleman and things. So, I mean, from that moment on, I became so deep into all kinds of things. Today, it's like, if you listen to my playlist, man, it goes from from Adam Ant to Madonna to Snarky Puppy to Spyra Gyra. I mean, it's all over the place, bruh. I just picked up Brass Against, this brass ensemble, and this album, they're doing heavy metal covers. Man, I heard these cats and I couldn't stop laughing, and they were funky. They were funky. They did a cover of Living Colors track, Cult of Personality. And we went to school. We went to school with those cats, and that album, has been one of my favorites for so long. And then to hear these guys doing it at a brass band, doing that, I couldn't stop laughing. I heard, and the funny thing is, that's not what got me to buy the album. I bought the album, I downloaded the album, and then I saw that. I'm like, wait a minute. And I played that. I was like, oh, these cats is out. So yeah, man. I mean, it is all over the place, man. It is, I think that's the beauty of music, man. That's the beauty of music. It's just like, if you open your mind up and you open your heart up, you're gonna listen to stuff that you never even thought you'd listen to, and it's gonna move you. It's gonna make you feel something. I have a 5-year-old daughter, man, and sometimes I'm creating. She comes into the studio and she's become my barometer. Like I'm playing something, and if she's not reacting, I don't think it's working. So I start to go someplace else. And the more she gets into it, the more I'm doing something. And I think that's amazing because she's been doing that since she was 2 years old. She has been reacting and finding joy in what I do. And that to me is what it's about. It's like we don't do this just, true musicians don't do it just for fame and glory or money. We do it because we reach out from our soul with what we do to touch somebody else's soul. And if you do that once in your life, to me, that's nirvana. That's where I'm at.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard the miraculous one, Keith Jacks, TRP.net, Third Rail Productions. And can I go out on a limb? Because I know I asked you this, and I hope I remember the answer. See, folks, if you're in L.A., we haven't had a subway system for that long. If you're from the East Coast, it's second nature. There's this thing in the subways known as the third rail. It's that thing that sends the electricity through the rail and it powers the train. Is that where the name came from?
I'll be honest with you. The name came from, I was in the studio with Eric B. and Rakim, and we were recording Follow the Leader. That was the first record that I ever heard, that I worked on, that I heard played at a club at Studio 54 or 51, whatever it was. You know what I'm talking about. But he had a line in there. The stage is a cage and the mic is a third rail. And when Rakim spit that line, it just, Rakim did this on a regular basis. Like, he would spit lines and it just hit me in my chest and I'd fall back. But he said, the stage is a cage and the mic is a third rail. And I was just like, oh, man. And I wrote it down. That's the name of my production company, Third Rail Productions. But but you're right. It is about the subways and the power to the trains. It powers the trains. It keeps things moving. And Rakim put it in my head and I was like, yeah, man. Third Rail Productions. I'm good with it.
There you go. All right, folks. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode, the inaugural episode of Music Outlook LA, where we provide you with the gigs, the gear, and the info. I'm your host, Will Kimsey. That's Keith Jacks. Tune in again. We'll have more for you. This is a weekly show. I'll let you know later on who's going to be up for next week. But tune in, turn on, get informed, folks. Remember, this is what it's all about. Close out with this. Keith, you had said, if you're not doing this for love, basically I'm surmising you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm going to tag onto it with this, and then I'm going to let you go. Confucius said, and I'm paraphrasing, if you're doing something you love every day, you never work a day in your life. That's why we do this, folks. We do it because we love it. Yeah, we want to make money, and we're gonna make what we make, But first, we do it because we love it. We want to entertain. We want to put some emotion in you guys. We want to do this for the right reasons. So learn your craft, get the gear, learn how to work it, get the info, protect yourselves, and make it happen.
Amen.
Keith, in parting, you got any wise words of wisdom?
Man, the only thing I can say is just, keep it flowing, bruh. Keep it flowing. Just, when you feel it, make it and share it.
All right, folks. Again, this is Will Kimsey, a.k.a. WK Music. Enjoy. Be blessed. Do what you got to do. Make it happen, Captain. Peace.
Peace.
This podcast is both brought to you and produced by Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Music Outlook LA is a copyrighted broadcast of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Will Kimsey or Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or any other use of this product without the express written consent of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC is strictly prohibited.